All right, good evening, everyone. Um, it's a late breaking news on a Friday, unfortunately, for a whole lot of things. Obviously, the Kareem Hunt news coming down today. Kareem Hunt uh, released by Kansas City uh, after the news of his charges or lack of charges, his offenses that he committed last February in a Cleveland hotel. This was a quick moving story today. So let's dive into it a little bit. Some of the things that happened, some of what to expect, and some of some of the parallels that we can look at, how it's going to affect his dynasty value, all of those things here now. So the story, this is back on February 10th of this year. So months ago, over 9 months ago, Kareem Hunt has an altercation with a woman in a Cleveland hotel, Metropolitan Hotel in Cleveland. There's video that has been released today, which is obviously one of the reasons why we're here. Kareem Hunt shoves the woman at least twice. At some point during the altercation, the woman gets thrown to the ground by, it appears to be somebody else other than Hunt. And that is when Kareem Hunt kicks her. There's some thought that he may have kicked her in the upper body. It looked to me like the leg, but it doesn't really matter. He kicked her while she was on the ground, falls back down, and that basically, there's an argument, and that basically concludes any of the stuff that Hunt did. Hunt's not arrested. There's a police investigation. Witnesses are talked to. Some of the body cam from that night was been released. Video of the police talking to his friends, video of the police talking to the woman in question, video of police talking to Hunt. He's not arrested. The news had actually this made the news, but there was no charges. There didn't really appear to be any follow-up on it in the media or anything like that until today when TMZ releases the video. They released a video of the incident, which I just described. You can find it. It's on TMZ's website. You can find it through YouTube as well. And then things move really quickly. The NFL releases a statement. They say they asked for the video. They didn't get it by the corporate policy of the hotel. The corporate policy only releases it to law enforcement. They asked law enforcement for the video and weren't granted it. Now, what I find interesting in that whole story is that the NFL's official hotel is Marriott. This hotel in Cleveland where this occurred is a Marriott family hotel. So it seems unlikely. I don't know. It seems to me kind of odd that they weren't able to get this video if they really wanted it, given that particular fact. But ultimately, according to them, they claim that they didn't get the video until today. Obviously, the news that first came out really was that Kansas City sent him home. It was unsure about what his playing status was going to be this week. They sent him home. A short time later, the NFL issues a statement, and they place Kareem Hunt on the commissioner's exempt list. It says the statement, according to NFL, the NFL says the NFL has placed Kareem Hunt of the Kansas City Chiefs on the commissioner's exempt list, and as a result, he may not practice, play, or attend games. The NFL's investigation, which began immediately following the incident in February, will include a review of the new information that was made public today. Obviously, the video. Notably, just to give you an idea of what the commissioner's exempt list actually means, this has come up in a couple of spots. Adrian Peterson, notably after he was charged with some violence towards his children. The exempt list is a special player status available to clubs only in unusual circumstances. The list includes those players who have been declared by the commissioner to be temporarily exempt from counting within the active list limit. Only the commissioner has the authority to place a player on the exempt list. Clubs have no such authority, and no exemption, regardless of its circumstances, is automatic. The commissioner also has the authority to determine in advance whether a player's time on the exempt list will be finite or will continue until the commissioner deems the exemption should be lifted and the player returned to the active list. It appears from the language of the statement that it is an indefinite suspension or an indefinite placement on the exempt list until the investigation is concluded. These things can go on a while. The Ezekiel Elliott thing, I've talked at some length on in other forums about how that was handled. I have experience handling types of investigations like this in my day job. It seemed that it went on way too long, given all the facts of that. It seems like this should be a relatively straightforward incident. One thing to note, that just because that Kareem Hunt wasn't arrested, charged, convicted, any of those things, does not mean that he can't be punished by the NFL. It does not mean that he can't be caught by the Chiefs, which he ultimately was. It does not have any implication in terms of how the NFL treats him. That is not a requirement for him to be suspended, placed on the exempt list, or anything like that. So that's important to note. Again, going back to the Ezekiel Elliott thing, Ezekiel Elliott was not suspended. Ezekiel Elliott was not arrested, but he was ultimately suspended. One thing to also note, there has been some talk on Twitter and online about the status of Hunt in a 6-game suspension. I don't think that that's actually in play. That may be in play, but I think that assumption is poorly placed. And the reason why is this. The 6-game suspension, the Ezekiel Elliott situation, was specifically based on the domestic violence policy of the NFL. That is not the case in this. Specifically, that it was right under the domestic violence policy in the NFL. It's an automatic 6-game suspension if you commit domestic violence. This was put in place after the Ray Rice incident. Does not appear to be the case in this, because there was no domestic relationship between this woman and Kareem Hunt. So that does not cue an automatic, just because it's a woman and he's a man, doesn't cue an automatic 6-game suspension. So if you see that, just be careful about that type of analysis, because I don't think it's actually a right or the rules that'll govern it. The personal conduct policy, which gives a little bit more discretion, will be what actually governs this particular suspension. So getting that out of the way, he's now been cut, subject to waivers. I think it's interesting in terms of Kansas City's statement. Kansas City releases a statement, and they say basically that it's not, they don't even really note what he did. So it says, and I'll quote it: earlier this year, we were made aware of an incident involving running back Kareem Hunt. At that time, the National Football League and law enforcement initiated investigations into the issue. As part of our internal discussions with Kareem, several members of our management team spoke directly to him. Kareem was not truthful in those discussions. The video released today confirms that fact. We are releasing Kareem immediately. I think the language of that's notable for the specific, what it doesn't mention, which is the violence the committed towards the woman. Kansas City is in a tough spot. I'm not here to make moral judgments on Kansas City or what they do as a franchise. Andy Reid has been notable in his ability to get, in his willingness and to give people second chances. Michael Vick is an example of that. Also, Tyreek Hill, let's not forget, he had domestic violence conviction, I believe, when he was in college, strangled his pregnant girlfriend. So they come at this with I think a different angle. I'm not saying whether or not that's appropriate or not. It's just it's a notable distinction, and what's left out is that it was the untruthfulness. Again, they can release him for whatever reason they want. But it's notable, especially in some of the other scenarios that we've seen this year, the Urban Meyer situation at Ohio State, where he outright lied. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to put that than he outright lied about the domestic violence allegations of one of his former coaches. So it's I think a notable distinction, and I think you can, give Kansas City some credit for the way they handled it. Straightforward. In terms of, really dynasty value, it seems to suck that we have to be talking about that right now. But that's really one of the reasons why we're here. I don't know what's going to happen. If I had to guess, I don't think Kareem Hunt gets claimed off waivers. The reason I say that is he's not eligible to play. I've seen it get kicked around online. Excuse me. I've seen it get kicked around online a little bit that he is maybe a potential fill-in for some of the other injuries around the league. I don't think that's going to happen. The NFL drags their heels in these situations. The Adrian Peterson thing went on for a whole season. Zeke Elliott's thing went on for like 18 months. This investigation has been going on a while for Kareem Hunt. But again, this is new information, and the NFL doesn't do this quickly. You can come at that with however angle you want to, but they just don't come at this quickly. So I did post on, I have to look it up pretty quickly here, just quickly here. I did post on Twitter just to get a gauge of the market quickly, and I've seen other people post polls as well. Dynasty trade Kareem Hunt or random 2019 first. I posted about an hour ago. It's got 300 votes. Kareem Hunt gets 27%. The random 2019 first gets 73%. This is a little bit of an academic point, probably at this point. Most dynasty leagues have, if you have a trade deadline, most of the ones that I've play in have a trade deadline, and it's already passed in I think all of my leagues. So that is not something that is probably really a legitimate marketplace at this point. So that's but I think it's important to keep that in mind, sort of what the value on these things is going to change. If you can get into the market, I'd be nervous. I think obviously the Ray Rice situation is one that's recent. I don't know how I feel about the Ray Rice as a comp on this. I think that it's probably more of a situation of. I thought Ray Rice was more of a age-related situation combined with the problem. Kareem Hunt's still in his prime. I think Kareem Hunt probably gets another chance if I had to guess. I would bet that we haven't seen the last of him. But he's got a lot of work to do, and I don't think it's this season because he's on the exempt list. Teams are going to need to do due diligence on this. They've shown to struggle in sort of the late breaking, quick response type scenarios. I point specifically to the Lyle Collins situation shortly before the draft a couple years ago, where he was questioned in a homicide investigation. There was some thought maybe he was a suspect. Teams took the ultra conservative approach and no one drafted him. He ended up landing with Dallas as an undrafted free agent after he got cleared in that investigation. But that was within 72 hours of the NFL draft. All that information was sort of funneling out. So, their NFL teams aren't going to have this amount of time. Obviously, it's a different scale in terms of the investigation, but I find it hard to believe that he'll get claimed off waivers. But we'll see. We saw the Reuben Foster, the running back or the linebacker for the 49ers, get arrested for domestic violence related issues in the past week, and then gets cut by the 49ers and gets picked up by Washington. So I don't think anything's outside the realm of possible, but I do think that the reaction to that wasn't that pretty. And I don't think that Kareem Hunt's available this year, based on everything that we've known and what we've seen in the past. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I would be cautious. I mean, listen, if you're going to trade a late 19 first for Kareem Hunt, I mean, it has upside on that, right? And I sort of the warp data that I've been working on for my book, I think he clearly has upside on that pick, but there's significant downside too. I'm in the business of upside, right? That's something that I think that you should aim for, that you should strive for, that you really need to, target in your picks. If people get nervous and are running for the hills, and you can, get 2 seconds for Kareem Hunt, I like that idea. Or trade 2 seconds for Kareem Hunt, I probably like that. I think it's a risk reward play, but again, you're trying to capture upside in these trades, and that's a place to get it. When everyone else is scared, run towards it. Zay Jones is a good example of that earlier this year, where he almost fell out of a building and died, and has sort of, I don't know if resurrected his career is the right word, but played significantly better than last year. So after his price really dropped in the offseason. So we've seen examples of that. Adrian Peterson is an example. Zeke is an example of this, right? Where things happen, people drop in price, and then you can sort of get him on the rebound. This is a little bit different, I think, because he's without a team, which that sort of gives me concern. And Kansas City would be one of the teams that would give someone like this a bounce back, right or wrong. I think that's just a fact in terms of how they treat these situations. So, yeah, I don't, I think that we'll see him again. I would suspect that we'll see him again, but I think there's more risk than in those other situations. Spencer Ware is obviously a plug and play starter in a good offense. He's a good running back, right? He's obviously been Kareem Hunt's backup. Hasn't seen a ton of work this year because he's been Kareem Hunt's backup, but gets vaulted into a top 3 NFL offense right when it matters for fantasy players. So I would feel comfortable playing him. He's a competent running back. We've seen him carry a workload. He is, he's 27 years old. He just turned 27. He hasn't really seen, I think I'm just looking up his stat line here. It looks like his season high of touches is 11, but he has seen, 2 games of double digits in the past, month and a half, double-digit points. So playing the Raiders this week, Ravens next week, Chargers and Seahawks round out basically the regular season or the playoffs of fantasy, and he gets the Raiders in week 17 if that's relevant to you. I think he's a back end running back 1. I don't do weekly rankings, but I would feel comfortable in that area playing him right now. This is a type of decision that can change your league, right? We didn't necessarily expect this, but being open to the idea that running backs are very vulnerable for injury related reasons, all of the other things, and Spencer Ware is going to step into a lead role, probably be the clear back here. I think that, when you look at that, the upside on that is huge. And so this is why you roster him, right? This is why you roster guys like Austin Eckler and, some of these other guys that we've talked about ad nauseum here and on UTH, where I do the premium podcast on running backs, being open to these ideas. James Conner's a good example of this, right? If Spencer Ware finishes as a running back 30 for the season, right, he's probably made an enormous impact on your fantasy team from here on out. So weekly finishes could be big from here on out, and season long is a bad measure of value. So that's where I'm at. I mean, it's interesting. Could Spencer Ware be the 19 running back? I think that he could. I think they probably add someone. We saw what they did, a couple of years ago. They added, when he was their starting running back, they added Hunt. So I think they're probably in the market for a running back, maybe of a similar type of cost coming into next year. But again, Ware is plenty capable in a high-powered offense with a really good quarterback and a great coach in terms of getting running backs touches and getting running backs, fantasy points. So, but I'm open to the idea that he's a 19 starter. So we shall see. Some questions I'm just getting in the chat real quick. James Conner, Spencer Ware. I haven't even really looked at weekly matchups yet this week, outside of any Thursday night games ahead, which were all pretty clear decision-making stuff for me. I'd probably roll with James Conner, just at first glance. So unless anyone else has any major questions, we'll sign off. I'm glad everyone could join me. I know it was sort of late and impromptu and unfortunate, really. I don't like talking about these things. I like to do fantasy football because it's not my work job, not my day job, but sometimes my day job does bleed into fantasy football, which is not something that I love, but something that I realize the value in. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. I thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate the fact that you guys can give me some, that I have value to add to you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate all that. And if you guys have any questions or anything, hit me up on Twitter at McNamara Dynasty. I am going to probably get out an article this week over at analytics@dynasty.com. I'm still working on some ideas for the website. I sort of like the direction that I'm trending in. There's not a ton of content up there. I think that may change. We'll sort of see with the off season. I got to get the book finished, but I've got some new and interesting ideas for the website that I think will be helpful to folks going forward. You can pre-order the book. We'll get you, if you pre-order, you get some advanced content, just some hit rate stuff and some stuff that I've already sent out to subscribers. So if you have any questions about that, you can hit me up on Twitter or go to the website analytics@dynasty.com. And thanks everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it.